everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel. I'm Josephine Koh here. If you are joining me for the first time, you can check out my previous videos. Just a quick introduction. I'm a Bosendorfer concert pianist from Singapore, a music theorist, as well as the author of the Practice in Music Theory series. Today we're here for another music theory lesson based on the Grade 6 workbook. I shall be doing and continuing topic 1 on harmony basics and techniques on the principles of chord progressions. So when we speak about chord progressions, we are dealing with the arrangements and the voicing of notes either for keyboard or for 4-part writing, SATB, soprano, alto, tenor, bass. Of course, when we deal with chord progressions, it could also be applied to harmonizing a melody or harmonizing a bass line. So let us dwell into page 7 of the workbook. In my previous lesson, I presented how you could write individual chords, paying attention to voicing and doubling of the notes. In this lesson, we shall look at how to write a series of chords, forming chord progressions. Chords written in isolation will form a musically sound progression if we pay attention to good melodic movement and harmonic movement. So let us now look at the melodic element. In writing a series of chords, it is recommended that a good melodic line is established, particularly with the uppermost part. When progressing from one chord to another, it is unwise to have wide leaps between the notes. It is recommended that notes that are similar are kept in the same voice or to have as little movement as possible. When harmonizing notes in the minor keys, it is often that we come across the 6 and 7 notes. They would create an augmented second interval, of which this can be resolved by using the melodic minor, forming major second intervals instead. It is necessary to avoid wide leaps when writing chord progressions. This situation can be solved by having the notes moving in the opposite direction. Overlapping of parts need to be avoided. In this situation, the alto voice has overlapped the soprano voice. We would often attempt to voice the notes in such a way that there's minimal movement among the parts. In this situation, when writing chords 3, 5, and 7, we would encounter the leading note. It is necessary to resolve it to the tonic or for it to fall third. Let's now look at the harmonic elements. In this situation, we have two chords containing parallel fifths and octaves. B flat and F, C and G forming parallel fifths, and B flat and B flat, C and C between the soprano and bass parts forming an octave. In this situation, although the fifths are in contrary motion, they are not allowed. When writing notes between the soprano and bass parts, we have to be aware to avoid an octave between soprano and bass that is approached with a leap. The soprano part approaching the octave with the bass with a stepwise motion is allowed. When dissonant intervals occur, in such a situation, a diminished fifth resolves to a third. An augmented fourth would diverge to a sixth. Problems will occur when we write chords. In this situation, chord 4 to 5 contains parallel octaves and fifths. The situation can be avoided by having the notes move in contrary motion and having intervals of thirds or sixths in any two parts. Similarly, in this example of 5/6, the chord 6 has its root doubled instead of the third. This causes parallel movement again of fifths and octaves between the voices. The solution is to double the third in chord 6 and with parts moving in contrary motion. Let us now look at working out the exercises on page 11 of the workbook. If we were to write the chord progression for 2 to 5, we would place the notes as A, C, C, E, doubling the third of the secondary chord, and thus laying out the notes as such, kept within the octave for all the upper parts except for tenor and bass. For chord 5, doubling the root of the chord, thus we would have a good way to check for consecutives would be to look for fifths and octaves. In this case, we would notice that there is an octave here, but to ensure that there's no octave in similar parts. We will also notice that there is a fifth interval here between the alto and bass part, and we have to ensure that there is no fifth between the alto and bass parts. Next, we look at writing for the chords 1B going to 5. Similarly, if we spell out the notes being in the first inversion, we would place B in the bass and voice the other notes of the chords this way, keeping to an octave or less for the upper parts. With the chord 1B progressing to chord 5, we would write the notes. In such a case, again, we would check for the octaves and the fifths. Here there is an octave, and here there is a fifth. We would ensure that a fifth does not occur between the same parts, neither does the octave. I hope this helps you to write the progression for 2 chords. Let's now look at writing for 3 chords, involving the second inversion chords. Let us now look at the voicing of second inversion chords. A passing 6/4 occurs in the progressions of 1, 5C, 1B, 1B, 5C, 1, 4, 1C, 4B, and 4B, 1C, 4. In these progressions, the second inversion chord occurs on the weak beat. It is possible to voice the notes such that they move smoothly within the parts, or for the similar notes to stay in the same part. Here is the progression of 1B, 5C, 1, and this is the progression of 4B, 1C, 4. A cadential 6/4 progression occurs with a 5/1 perfect cadence decorated by the 4C, or a 4/1 plagal cadence decorated by the 4C. Here is an example. The plagal cadence of 4/1 is decorated with the 4C chord. The cadential 6/4 progression occurs at cadence points. Thus, we could have a progression of 1C5 for an imperfect cadence, or 1C5-1 towards a perfect cadence, and 1C5-6 towards an interrupted cadence. Here is an example of a 1C5-1 towards a perfect cadence, and notice that the second inversion chord of cadential 6/4 chords occurs on the strong beat. Here we have the other 6/4 progressions. The auxiliary 6/4, of which we have 1, 5C1, with the 5C chord serving as an auxiliary chord on the weak beat. Here we have an example of the pedal 6/4 whereby the tonic counterpoint is held in two parts and all other notes move in auxiliary motion. Lastly, an arpeggiated 6/4 progression occurs when the same chord moves in different inversions. In this situation, it moves from chord 1 to 1B to 1C. Let us now look at the exercise on page 15. Writing for 1, 5C, 1B. Doubling the root of the chord. In keeping the parts within the octave again, for chord 5, the notes will be C, E, G, G. We will put the G note in the bass, and bearing in mind not to create a consecutive octave, we would not put G in the same bass and tenor parts. Instead, the G note would go to the soprano voice. Notice that the C note is common in both chords and is being kept in the same part. And we would do the same for the next chord. In its first inversion, A will be the bass note. And this is the finished progression. Notice that the highest line moves in stepwise motion against the bass voice. The note C, being common in three chords, is kept in the same part. On page 16, we have the minor key E minor. For chord 5, in the next chord, notice that the leading note goes to the tonic. In this situation, I have stepwise movement in the lowest voices, and the highest voice can be notated with a dotted minim. I hope you liked the theory lesson today. Do join me in the next lesson. But before you go, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel below by clicking the subscribe button so you don't miss anything else, and you can continue to proceed to do the exercises in the workbook. And I look forward to seeing you in the next theory lesson on topic 2, realizing figured bass.